So we're now up to part 10 of this tutorial series where we're building a quiz with AngularJS. Of course, if you haven't seen any of the previous videos, go back and check those out now. But in this video, we're going to start creating the markup for our quiz. Welcome back to part 10 of this series on AngularJS. And in this part, we're going to create the markup for this top section of the quiz. So of course we have these buttons, one for each question in the quiz. So hopefully you'll be able to guess that we could create the markup for one of these buttons and then use ngRepeat to create as many buttons as we need, one for each question in the quiz. And then we'll just style it with bootstrap, make this section 8 columns wide and the legend 4 columns wide. But of course, if we want to loop through the amounts of questions in the quiz, we need access to those questions inside the view, where our ngRepeat will be. So to do that, we come into our quiz controller, where we've injected the data service, which is where our questions live, and we just need to attach that onto the view. So we'll do that by saying vm.dataService equals data service. And now we have access to that data service object inside our view. So we'll come into our quiz controller in the HTML and we'll just start off by creating a row, and then we'll create that 8 column layout for our progress area. We'll add an H4 for progress, and then we'll create a button toolbar, which is a bootstrap element, and inside that we create our button. We'll give it a class of button, and then we add our ngRepeat. And inside here we'll give each iteration an alias of question in quiz dot, because we're inside our quiz controller, data service, because that's where our questions live, dot quiz questions, which of course is a property on our data service object. If we come back into our data service factory, we have the object and we have quiz questions as a property on there. So that's what we're referencing. So now if we save that and head back into our work in progress, we can hit start quiz, and now we have a button for each question in the quiz. Now we need to style them. So we want the button to be red if the question is unanswered, and we want it to be blue if it is answered, which using the bootstrap classes is button-danger if it's unanswered and button-info if it is answered. So we'll come back into here and we'll use another directive called ng class, and inside the quotes ng class accepts an object with name value pairs. So in an object, if we head into an example of an object, we've got our curly braces, and then a name value pair is simply turtle's data, and then a colon, and then something else. And the name is what comes before the colon, and the value is what's after the colon. So inside this ng class, we give it the curly braces, not the double curly braces, so we'll remove that. So that indicates an object, and then we give it a name value pair, where the name is the class that you want to add, and the value is the condition, which if evaluated to true, will mean you display that class. So to make it a bit more obvious, we'll add on our name, which is the class we want to add, which is button.info, inside the single quotes, then the colon, and now our value. And the value will be question dot selected does not equal null. So this question is, of course, the quiz questions property on the data service. So inside the data service, we have this quiz questions, which each iteration will go through one object, and each has a selected property, which by default is set to null. And then later on, we're going to create some logic that when the user clicks on an answer, one of these, it will change the selected flag to the index of the answer they clicked on. Which means if it's not null, the answer has been selected and the question has been answered. And if it's still null, then this question is yet to be answered. So the button info is that blue class, which means the question has been answered. So we check if it's not null, which means it has been answered, add that class. And then we add a comma, and then we can add another name value pair. So we'll add button danger, and then add our colon, and then we want to add the opposite condition, which means the question hasn't yet been answered, which would be question dot selected does equal null, which means it's still in the default state, so it hasn't been answered yet. So now if we head back into our work in progress, we hit start quiz. Now all of our buttons are red, which is what they should be, because no questions have been answered yet. So all of the selected properties are still their default value of null. Now we want to add the little symbols inside each button, and that's done using glyph icons. And again, it's a conditional. So if the question has been answered, we want to add the pencil, and if it is yet to be answered, we add the question sign. So we'll come back into here, and inside our buttons, we'll add a span, and we'll give the span a class of glyph icon, but then we want a conditional second class of either glyph icon pencil or glyph icon question sign. So again, we'll use ng class. We'll pass it an object, and we'll add a class of glyph icon dash pencil if question dot selected does not equal null, and we'll add glyph icon dash question dash sign if question dot selected does equal null, and we can save, and then go back into our work in progress, hit start quiz, and now we have the question sign in all of our unanswered questions. So now we can add the legend over here. Now notice that the progress is a bit too small, so we'll make that an H2 instead of an H4. So now we have this section, which takes up 8 columns. So now we'll add the legend section, which will take up the remaining 4 columns. And we'll add a row, and inside the row we'll add an H4 with legend, and then we'll split it into columns again. So we'll make a col sm, we'll make it 4 columns, and this is where we'll put our button class of button and button info. So we don't need to use ng class this time because it's hard coded into the code. So we've got this answered and unanswered, and these never have to change. So we can hard code these values in. So we add button, button info, and then span, and we'll give it the class of glyph icon dash pencil, and then below here we'll say this was answered, and then we'll create another 4 column area and add another button. We'll give ourselves a bit more space. And then here we'll add a class of button and button danger. Again, create a span, class of glyph icon and glyph icon question sign. Save that and add unanswered. Now we can check what we've got. Start quiz, and we have our progress and our legend. So now in the next video we'll move on to creating the markup for each question with this little well. For those of you that haven't checked out my website yet, I do a full article write-up for every single video that I put out on YouTube, and that will include code snippets and other little things that will help you along. The link to the write-up for the current video is on the bottom left of the screen. And if you just want to continue watching this video series, then just click the link in the center of the screen and we'll get started with the next video.